in the league, and maybe the first in about 3 months, is Wemby. 40 points, 15 rebounds, 3 blocks, no turnovers, 70% from the field. What is he, 21? The kid had 40 points in 30 minutes.
He can't even see you, bro. He don't see me. And I saw this picture. I'm like, yo, the top of my head, that bro nipple. Now, I am starting to get in the defensive stance because what I'm looking at is, I know this pin down is coming. So I'm trying to see what angle I can take to try to throw this screen off. But then I saw this picture and I'm like, bruh, number one, bro, looking like he unbothered by me, don't do that.
Super.
And the crazy thing is, maybe I'm crazy for that, but I want to do that 15, 20 more times.
It's so rare in this day and age, certainly for somebody this young, to have that burning desire where game 35 it means as much to him as game 5 in a playoff series. Doesn't want to lose. Wants to just rip your heart out and show it to your company. I said that did remind me of Jordan and Kobe. And tight.
You like how Victor is?
Oh, I just loved it.
19.
I loved it. I loved everything about all of them. There's nothing I didn't love about any of them.
Some players in the NBA earn respect the moment they step on the floor, while others earn fear through experience and reputation. But then there's Victor Wembanyama, who seems to shift the entire atmosphere of a game even before he ever touches the basketball. Around the league, players quietly admit something unusual. Going up against him feels less like a normal matchup and more like dealing with a real-time glitch in the system. Every movement, every reach, every presence feels slightly out of the ordinary. Is it simply his extraordinary height, his timing, or something deeper that no one fully explains? What is it about him that makes seasoned veterans pause for a moment when he checks into the game? And when he's on the court, why does it feel like the outcome of certain matchups is already leaning in one direction before the opening tip even happens?
Played against.
That's tough. I need one that's recent, Wemby.
It's your boy, Wembanyama. He that deal. It is what it is. It's settled. He's that deal. I didn't know he was leading the league in blocks, but yeah, that's the biggest thing because look at it, night in, night out. I'm saying, no, you ain't gonna dunk on me, so I'm Olay. Ain't no shot blocker. If he's leading the league in blocks, it might be his first depoy.
His team stinks, but it's clearly not his fault.
What do you think of Wemby?
People see the highlights. They don't see the person. I watched that 2023 draft night. Everyone wanted the camera. Victor didn't. While others posed, he pulled out his phone, just taking it all in. That's who he is.
Again, I've seen Wemby make plays that I haven't seen anybody else make in the history of the game.
The NBA never really expected reality to start resembling a sci-fi simulation. Yet that is exactly how players describe it when they talk about facing Victor Wembanyama. Standing at 7'4", his presence goes far beyond shot blocking. The moment he steps onto the court, he subtly alters the entire flow, spacing, and structure of the game. Across the league, players quietly admit something unusual. Going up against him doesn't feel like a typical matchup. It feels like dealing with a system that doesn't quite behave like normal basketball. Every movement, every reach, every defensive rotation seems to bend the usual rules of rhythm. Is it just his extraordinary height, his timing, or something harder to define that players can't quite put into words? What is it that makes even experienced veterans hesitate for a split second when he's on the floor? And when he's playing, why does it often feel like the outcome of certain possessions is already shifting before the game even settles into its rhythm?
Victor Wembanyama just do. I'm sorry to Joker, and I'm sorry to Shea. If Wemby's gonna give you 40, I'm ready to have the conversation. This guy might just be the best. I was a god at what I saw last night from Victor.
What do you think about Wemby and Fox teaming up? I like it a lot. This is it. This is proper. They're in a franchise that know how to make that work. I know that was one of the reasons Fox turned the extension down is because I think he wanted to end up in San Antonio with Wemby.
At first, most people dismissed it as just hype, the usual internet exaggeration that forms around a young prospect with rare measurements and a polished shooting touch. But as more NBA veterans reflect on real matchups against him, the tone begins to shift. It no longer sounds like marketing or speculation. It starts sounding more like warning. What was once treated as highlight-driven excitement is now being described in a far more serious way by those who have actually stepped on the floor with him.
He has the potential to be the best two-way player in NBA history.
NBA history? I mean, he could because he's 7'6", so just throw it by the rim.
I mean, he'll be like the first two-way all-timer that like the defense may surpass the offense because the defense is so good.
We're so mesmerized that we're not even paying attention to his defense because he's so offensively skilled, right? We're not saying, well, damn, this is like Rudy Gobert and damn Ben Wallace. Like, he's all of that in one, but because he shows so much flash and skill offensively, we're stuck here.
I mean, but you talk about his ability to score in the paint, but that long-range game is going to keep it improving as well as he gets older in this league.
What happens when a league built on elite athletes suddenly meets someone who looks like he was engineered in a lab where defense, shooting, and coordination were all pushed to levels no one agreed should be possible?
He has that burning desire. He has that, and that's why he will be one of the greatest. There's no other way. There's no other way to say it. He works too hard. He's too focused. He's too locked in. He's too extraterrestrial. He's too everything. Like, there's no way to say it. He will be one of the greatest players.
The first thing players always bring up isn't even his scoring or shot blocking, but something more basic: perception. Because when Wembanyama is near the rim, the geometry of basketball feels slightly wrong. A routine layup suddenly feels like it's being finished through a moving ceiling fan, and even guards who spent years scoring over elite rim protectors admit that their release point changes in their head before they even leave the ground. Coaches describe it in a more technical way, explaining how spacing collapses differently against him, but players put it more simply. They say you feel rushed even when no real pressure is there yet, because just anticipating his reach creates stress before any contact actually happens. Opposing guards talk about driving to the rim only to realize the help defender is already there, even when that help defender started from a position that should have been too far away to matter. There's a delayed moment of realization where the offensive player thinks they've beaten the defense, only to find the shot they were about to take has already been mentally erased by a 7'4" wingspan that shows up like a closing door. I have no hesitation saying this at this point. That's the most talented player I've ever seen, in terms of the full range of what he could become. That's number one. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be the greatest player of all time, right? That doesn't mean he's going to be on Jordan's level. That doesn't mean he's going to be on LeBron's level. It doesn't mean he's going to become those guys. But this is the highest ceiling I've ever seen in the NBA, unless you can point to someone else who is 7'4" with handles, a jumper, a mean streak, and elite skill across the board. I have no problem saying that. And while fans usually focus on the highlight blocks, players inside the league tend to talk more about the possessions that never even become highlights, because those are the moments where Wembanyama changes decisions before they're even made. That's where the psychological layer becomes important. Basketball is usually about reading reactions, but against him, players end up reacting to possibilities that already feel too risky to even try. On offense, it's just as unusual because he doesn't play like a traditional big man who survives on post-ups and putbacks. Instead, he operates with a skill set that includes perimeter shooting, ball handling, and passing angles normally reserved for guards. There's a real sense of disbelief that spreads through defensive rotations when someone that tall starts hitting pull-up jumpers comfortably, as if normal rules about balance and elevation don't apply the same way. Even experienced coaches who have seen every kind of offensive system describe how difficult it is to build a coverage that doesn't immediately create a mismatch somewhere else on the floor. He's not the first tall player in this league, right? He's not the first player with length or size. He's not. So let's be clear about that. Yes, it's a factor, but when we talk about what he can do offensively, his coordination, what looks uncoordinated at times is really just his length. His ability to catch the ball with his back to the basket or even half-turned and still find a finish before he lands. That's coordination we've never really seen before. And it's not just that. The handling side of his game is where many players say things get mentally exhausting, because seeing someone that tall bring the ball up in transition at speed forces defenders into constant uncertainty about when to commit. It's not that he dribbles like a point guard in the traditional sense, but his stride length and coordination make every bounce cover more ground than expected, turning normal defensive spacing into a guessing game. Players who pressure him early often get beaten with ease, while those who back off realize they've already given up mid-range space that becomes his comfort zone almost instantly. And in a league where rhythm means everything, that constant adjustment creates a kind of fatigue that isn't physical at first, but mental, because every possession feels like recalculating risk in real time. That's where respect starts turning into caution, because players aren't just trying to stop him anymore, they're trying to avoid mistakes that become instant highlights on the other end. Some veterans describe it as facing elite rim protection and perimeter defense combined into one body, with the ability to recover from almost any breakdown.
And yet, despite all of that, what keeps the league fascinated isn't just dominance, but unpredictability. Because even Wembanyama's development seems to move faster than scouting reports can keep up with. One week, the conversation centers on his rim protection. The next, it shifts to his three-point shooting. Then suddenly, it becomes about his passing reads or his ability to initiate offense in transition. That constant evolution puts opponents in a strange position where preparation never feels finished because there's always another layer that shows up in the very next matchup. Behind closed doors, coaches often admit that game planning against him feels less like solving a puzzle and more like trying to solve one that is changing shape while you're still assembling it. But underneath the humor, there's a very real recognition that the league rarely sees physical profiles that combine this level of height with this level of skill. And when it does, it usually takes years for both offenses and defenses to fully adapt. The most revealing moments often come after games, when opponents don't just describe what went wrong, but what they chose not to try, because that is where his influence becomes clearest. I don't know how you could watch that game last night and not come away thinking Victor Wembanyama is already in the conversation as the best player in the world. It doesn't even feel like hyperbole. I woke up still in awe, still excited to come in here and talk about what we just saw from him. In a game full of unbelievable moments, there was nothing quite like when the Spurs were down 3 with 30 seconds left in the first overtime, momentum completely tilted toward the Thunder, and Victor Wembanyama, at 8 feet tall, just walks into a 30-foot shot. Just walks into it. The entire arena went silent in disbelief. He doesn't always need big scoring nights or highlight blocks to affect the game, because simply being in the right place at the right time is enough to redirect entire possessions away from their original plan. That kind of presence is what players quietly respect, even in the middle of competition, because it changes the emotional rhythm of the game in ways numbers don't fully capture. And as more matchups build up, the narrative keeps expanding, not as fear in the literal sense, but as recognition that some challenges in this league are no longer just about talent. They are about adjusting to something that feels structurally different from what most players have ever prepared for. So when NBA players talk about him, it doesn't come across as panic. It sounds more like recalibration, a realization that every possession against him requires more timing, more caution, and more awareness than usual, because one small misread can flip into an immediate change of possession and momentum. And that brings everything back to the same question that keeps surfacing in locker rooms, post-game interviews, and coaching rooms. What do you actually do when the future of basketball is already standing in front of you, closing space before you even recognize it's gone, and forcing everyone else to decide whether to challenge it or simply survive it? Wembanyama is the kind of creative player that creative players would design. He's the type of player that KD or LeBron, if they were building someone in a video game, would create. 7'5", able to shoot threes, handle the ball, and run the floor. The first time we met, I was working a broadcast. After the game, I walked out and saw him in the weight room. He dropped the weights, came over, and shook my hand. All he did was lower his head, almost like he was looking for advice. I told him he was doing everything right and just needed to keep working hard. I was honestly surprised by how grounded he was. A few months later, I got a text from his agent asking if we could come to Seattle so I could spend time working with him. I asked what he wanted to improve. They said his handle needs work. I said, that's easy, I can help with that. I checked in with Pop to make sure it was fine, and we got on the phone. Everything lined up perfectly. If he stays healthy, he's going to be one of the very best players in the league, easily top 5 all-time potential. And that question becomes even more interesting when you realize the league isn't dealing with a one-dimensional problem that can be solved with a single defensive scheme or matchup adjustment. Because what Victor Wembanyama represents isn't just size or skill in isolation. It's a rare combination where both continue reinforcing each other in real time during games. That's where coaches begin to sound unusually careful in their post-game breakdowns. Not because they don't have answers, but because the usual answers in basketball don't scale cleanly against someone who can protect the rim at an elite level and still recover to the perimeter without losing balance, awareness, or control. The awareness of his positioning lingers like an invisible layer of defense that stretches across the entire court. If a big man brings the ball up the floor, the expectation is usually a slow, controlled entry into a half-court set. But when he does it, the pace doesn't slow down, it expands. Suddenly, defenders are reacting to a 7'4" ball handler moving with guard-like speed, long strides eating up space in a way that looks almost effortless, but changes everything in real time. But you asked before, and we'll shut that down again. Damn, now that's an MVP right there. So, like, he has that magic. He's different. He's in the game, and even with the number of games he's played, he's already beyond Mount Rushmore-level talent. He's got more threes than Steph Curry at the same time. Now we know Steph. That combination creates defensive breakdowns that aren't always loud or dramatic, but they're constant and effective, because even a half-second hesitation becomes enough space for him to rise into a jumper or turn into a passing angle that opens the entire floor. And while his shooting is widely discussed, what often gets missed is how it changes defensive positioning before the shot even happens. Defenders can't treat him like a traditional big, but they also can't treat him like a perimeter player when he's that tall. That forces a hybrid defensive response that most teams are still trying to define, where centers are pulled away from the paint and guards are suddenly asked to contest height mismatches they were never originally built for. Players talk about this with a mix of respect and disbelief, especially when they remember moments where he pulls off something that feels ahead of the league, like a quick perimeter jumper after a stop, or a transition read that turns into an easy assist. Those moments reinforce that his impact isn't just scoring or defense, it extends into decision-making on both ends, which is rare for any player, let alone someone his size. That's why some describe it as mentally exhausting, not because of constant physical pressure, but because of the non-stop recalibration required every possession just to account for his reach, timing, and positioning. I'd just say that's what's remarkable. We're seeing more kids coming from Europe now, especially France, which didn't always have a strong basketball pipeline, but now they do. And Victor is the next step in that chain. We're also going to see more players coming from Africa, and a lot of that is because of how the NBA and people like Masai Ujiri have helped expand the game globally. That is why his impact feels less like a matchup problem and more like a structural shift. Teams are slowly redefining spacing, ball movement, and shot selection every time he steps on the floor. And with each game, that shift becomes harder to ignore because the same question keeps resurfacing across locker rooms and coaching rooms alike. How do you build an offense that stays stable when one player can erase space, alter shots, and redirect decisions without even dominating the ball? For now, there is no finished answer, only adjustments, and every adjustment seems to invite another response. That is exactly why the league keeps watching, not because they're close to solving it, but because they're still trying to understand how long it will take for basketball to fully catch up to what is already unfolding in front of them.